Welcome to Django Model View Template, or MVT pattern, Django's implementation of the standard Model View Controller, or MVC pattern. After watching this video, you will be able to describe the Model View Controller pattern and describe the Django Model View Template pattern. The MVC design pattern divides application logic into three components. Model accesses and manipulates data but does not present data. Model may have database interfaces such as SQL or ORM, and it may use business logic to process raw data. View presents data in various forms, such as visual elements in a web page, a mobile app user interface, or as JSON/XML format. Controller coordinates between model and view. It routes requests, processes input, requests data CRUD from model, and updates view. When a client application sends a request which inputs to controller, controller routes the request, validates and processes the input, sends CRUD requests to model, and forwards data to view to be presented. In the Django framework implementation, there is no explicit controller. Instead, the Django server itself performs this function. Django Model manages data modeling and database mapping as well as business logic to process data. Django View describes which data is presented, but not how it is presented. Typically, View delegates to a template which describes how the data is presented. When a client sends a request, the Django server routes the request to the appropriate view based on the Django URL configuration. Thus, Django follows a Model View Template, or MVT pattern design. As we have learned, Django models are classes mapped to database tables. Django Model APIs allow developers to perform CRUD on objects. And developers can also write business logic in Django Model classes as functions. In Django, a view is essentially a Python function. This function takes a web request and applies the necessary logic to generate a web response, such as the HTML contents of a web page, a redirect, a 404 error, an XML document, an image, or any other web response. Often, View interacts with Django Model to get required data in the form of query set or objects to generate a web response. Django uses a template to generate dynamic web pages, which are sent back and rendered in a user's browser. The Django template contains static HTML elements, as well as special Python code describing how the dynamic content of HTML pages will be generated. In this video, you learned that the Django model differs from the traditional MVC pattern. In the Django Model View Template MVT pattern, Django Framework acts as controller, Django View describes which data to present, and Django Template describes exactly how data is presented.